Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Weishaupt, licensed clinical social worker with Tabor Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And I really appreciate those people who can come on and share with us some of these breaking news, especially when we're able to work with law enforcement to really make a difference in our communities for those people that are making a negative impact on that. Welcome back to the program. First Lieutenant Blake Tabor. Blake, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we appreciate it. Of course, Tabor Parish Sheriff's Office, Public Information Officer. And so tell us a little bit about Mr. Ruffin here and some of the impact and some of the charges, because a whole bunch of them with this particular incident.
Absolutely. So on January 14th of 2023, shortly after 11 o'clock, our patrol officers responded in reference to a disturbance.
Okay.
We received a call from an unknown person stating that they had witnessed a male and a female fighting inside of a vehicle in the 4400 block of South Down Mandalay Road. So that became very alarming to us. It's not often we get those calls. They do happen from time to time. So we responded to that location to attempt to locate. It took a while. We ultimately got a secondary call from emergency service equipment within a vehicle, which again makes this very unique.
Okay.
It was a distress call from inside of a vehicle, and you could hear hollering and yelling and screaming for help coming from the vehicle from what appeared to be a female.
Okay.
It was a short time later that our officers were patrolling, and they ultimately located a female running in the roadway. She was suffering from obvious signs of a physical altercation, and she was stopped and checked on by our officers.
Thank God.
Yeah,
for the
absolutely.
diligence of your team.
That led to the discovery that she had been involved in a disturbance with a male by the name of Mr. Ruffin.
And pictured here, this is Jonathan J. Ruffin.
Absolutely. So the investigation quickly culminated from that point. She made some accusations or allegations about him striking her numerous times during a disturbance inside the vehicle. He allegedly stole several items such as her phone and her car keys and personal items that were very expensive. And also, as she was running from the vehicle for safety, he allegedly fired several shots at her as she was running away.
Oh my goodness! And
Yep.
so firearms involved, so some of those charges may be attempted murder charges, right?
Yeah, not in this particular case.
Okay.
But there are some firearms
charges. Gotcha. Okay.
So, when we received that information, of course, that's pretty alarming. That's some pretty serious allegations against someone. So, our first stance is to make sure that we can substantiate all of those claims.
Okay.
It was pretty obvious, again, that she had been involved in a physical disturbance. So she had some injuries from, being struck by him. But as we continued to process the scene, we found some evidence at the location to substantiate that shots had been fired.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, that raises the bar at that point. Once you have someone that is a violent offender and has a violent background, such as Mr. Ruffin, and then you compound that with the fact that there's a firearm involved, and it becomes very serious.
Right, and so again, we look at this first call, which is alarming. Then we get the information through the vehicle, more alarming, and then we realize that a gun is involved. So this incident just keeps climbing.
Absolutely.
With regards to our concern.
And typically when we have disturbance complaints, we will dispatch two officers, one as a primary and one as a backup. Right. And needless to say, this quickly turned into 6 to 8 officers responding, which, of course is very time consuming. That's a lot of allocation of resources that we are concentrating and focusing on this one complaint.
Well, and again, it's the safety of your officers as well,
Absolutely.
The safety of that victim or that potential victim, and then especially substantiating a lot of that information that a firearm was involved and that shots were fired, and just, again, rather disturbing. So can we go through maybe some of those charges that we put Mr. Ruffin's
Sure.
picture back up and let you know that, again, Mr. Jonathan J. Ruffin has been arrested and by Tabor Parish Sheriff's Office, again, 68 vehicles and personnel to address this issue, and now he's being held.
Absolutely. He's. Before I mention the charges, I'd like to point out one additional component of this investigation, is we quickly determined that Mr. Ruffin was still in the area as we continued to investigate this incident.
Okay.
He had basically occupied a secondary vehicle and was driving around in the area. Once officers were tipped off to that information, we ultimately started patrolling, try to locate him. When we did, he realized that, and he fled the area in that particular vehicle, which ultimately led to that vehicle being involved in a crash. Wow. There was an innocent passenger inside that vehicle who was known to Mr. Ruffin. So that, again, adds another dynamic to this case.
Right.
And he was ultimately captured and taken into custody as he tried to flee on foot from the crash.
From the crash, okay.
So once we arrested him, he was arrested on charges of domestic abuse battery, aggravated assault with a firearm, false imprisonment with a dangerous weapon, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, felony theft, reckless operation of a motor vehicle, driving under suspension, driving with no insurance, as well as a few outstanding minor traffic warrants.
Yeah, and you read those off so fluently, but those are a lot of charges. And again, I'm just thankful that he's been apprehended.
Absolutely.
And the event took place over whatever amount of time that it did. But I'm so very glad that the Tabor Parish Sheriff's Office has the resources to go and identify the need, identify that it's a very important need, get the resources out there, and the safety of the victim, and getting that very dangerous person off the streets.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Blake, it seems like when you come on, I like to talk about safety needs. I like to talk about what people need to do to take care of themselves. But I actually am more excited when you can tell me about two individuals, potential criminals, taken off the streets. Absolutely. We got a couple of different situations. Tell us a little bit about Mr. Odemar first, if you don't mind.
Sure. Kind of a unique case that we've kind of been dealing with.
Okay.
On January 14th, shortly after 11 o'clock, our patrol division was called to the 6,000 block of Bayou Side Drive in reference to a traffic crash. Of course, when the initial call comes out, we just think it's a regular
routine,
crash,
right?
Routine, something we respond to on a daily basis. When we get there, we quickly determine that there's a male lying in a ditch who is suffering from an extremely serious leg injury, which is not typical. In close proximity to his body, we see a dirt bike laying in the roadway, and we also see a truck parked across the roadway. So, he's being provided medical treatment by the Locayu Fire Department, which we appreciate, and they were doing a fantastic job until the arrival of emergency services for medical treatment.
Right.
Ultimately, we were able to talk to that driver. He indicated that someone had swerved into his lane of traffic, and he ultimately lost control, struck the vehicle, and lost control and ended up in the ditch. As we continued to investigate this, we spoke with the other person that we suspected was involved, which happened to be Brian Odemar Jr. As we spoke with him, he immediately responded and confirmed that he was involved in the crash, and he made some pretty stunning comments. One of those comments was that he was attempting to pull into the oncoming lane in front of the dirt bike to stop him to confront him. We did not determine exactly why, but there was some talk and some allegations of the dirt bike speeding up and down the roadway several times. So at that point, we confirmed that. Louisiana State Police actually arrived on scene to provide us some additional assistance. There was a lot of evidence that was collected and notated at the scene, which indicated that Mr. Odemar did, in fact, drive into the oncoming lane to stop the dirt bike, which ultimately led and caused the crash.
Wow.
There were some independent witnesses there that were able to substantiate those accusations. And in fact, they coined it as it almost looked intentional. So, of course, that led to a lot of speculation. Ultimately, at the culmination of that investigation, Brian Odemar Jr. was arrested for aggravated second-degree battery. Okay.
Very good. And again, that's his picture there, and so we appreciate that. And that's the first of our two stories.
That's correct.
A very interesting one at that somebody would potentially do that intentionally. So let's talk a little bit about the second case.
Sure. The second one happened shortly after 11 a.m. on January 16th, which happened to be Monday. Mm-hmm. We get a call for service in the 300 block of Mozart Drive in reference to a structure fire. The Grand Caillou Fire Department immediately responded. They were able to get that blaze under control rather quickly.
Nice.
Although the camper-style trailer did suffer some pretty serious damage.
Right.
Our patrol division was Johnny on the spot with this, as they always are. They're fantastic. Wow. They were quickly able to determine that the homeowner was present. From talking with the homeowner, they provided details that this was an intentionally set fire.
Oh my goodness.
Which was also substantiated through the fire department's investigation as well, once
Right.
that blaze was extinguished. She named a Trinity Michael Chasson, a 19-year-old male from Houma, as being the person responsible for the fire.
Pictured here.
She made some accusations that she was asleep inside of the structure. She awoken to smoke inhalation.
Oh, my goodness.
She observed Mr. Chasson present inside, setting fire to different items within the home. At that point, she, of course, tried to exit the home. There was a brief struggle with Mr. Chasson, where he was trying to keep her inside of the structure. Again, these are allegations that are still under investigation.
Right.
But that was the information she provided. Trinity was not present at the time that our officers arrived.
Okay.
So we quickly got some secondary information that he was at a residence in the 2700 block of Express Boulevard. Again, our deputies, Johnny on the spot, immediately responded to that location and quickly got him into custody safely without incident, which
Wow.
is a win for everyone.
Right. And so this, again, this potential situation is not just arson. This may be that he was attempting to inflict harm to this person,
Absolutely.
potentially kill this person by fire. And so it's wonderful. Again, we talk about partnerships all the time, but the ability for you guys with TPSO to work with the fire department, to be able to collect data quickly enough to be able to figure out what we need to do. And again, we're not saying anything is finalized. It's an ongoing investigation. They need to be able to figure out exactly what happened. But I love the partnership between how y'all handled this situation and the fact that y'all would apprehend this guy without incident.
Absolutely. And look, and I think the important thing to point out with this is, as law enforcement, we are always talking about community involvement. Mm-hmm. These particular instances happen to be a lot of community involvement, and when that happens, it makes our job a lot easier and a lot more proficient. So we are able to do what we have to do. Right. So we just continue to ask the public to continue to give us information. Don't be afraid to talk to your officers, because ultimately it's your neighborhood, it's your area. You have to live there. We're just policing it. Right. So we want community involvement at all costs.
And keeping us safe. And so thank you to you and your team, the partnerships and how that happens. And we always appreciate you coming on to share this information so the public can know what a great job that your team is doing, so they're approachable. Absolutely. Out in the public. Thank you so much. All right, Blake, very good. All right, guys, that will do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more Bayou Time right here on HTV when we continue.